If you're a founder of a scaling startup and you have this feeling that the faster your company scales, the more often it's managing you rather than the other way around, then this episode is for you. My name is Agnieszka Jurczyk. I work with founders at moments of transition, when too much around them is changing for doing things the old way to be enough. In today's episode of Founder to Zero, I'll tell you what really separates the role of founding CEO from the role of scaling CEO. Why that shift is often so hard, and what happens when the business moves to the next level while we keep trying to operate the same way. Let's go, shall we? The chaos doesn't start in the middle of the day. It starts at the door. So glad you're here. Julia hears it before the door has even closed behind her. She doesn't particularly share finance manager's morning enthusiasm, especially when he's waving a laptop in her face like a piece of evidence. According to sales, he says, ARR is up 81%. I sent the report to the VC guys, and they're telling me it's creative accounting. Behind him stands the chief biz dev officer, chest out, as always, cufflinks gleaming, as always, and that confidence of a man who is absolutely convinced he personally carried the entire quarter. The client said they were new. This means recurring revenue. Finance glares at him with pity. Biz dev fires back with a smirk, and Julia suddenly feels like she's a judge in a courtroom where both lawyers are the ones who are guilty. She tries to slip away, but they won't let her go. I keep telling you it's recurring. I keep telling you pay-as-you-go is not recurring. You have no idea how to read customers. And you have no idea how to read management reports. Julia keeps walking. Just a few meters further, her name again. Product and ops, of course. The day hasn't even properly started and they're already at it. The client is threatening penalties again, the head of ops laments. We fixed the data, we escalated the tickets so product could fix the bug. The head of product interrupts. A bug means something behaves contrary to documentation. We have no documentation, therefore, not a bug. Julia sighs. They stare at her like she's the only adult in the building. She nods vaguely and keeps moving. Someone gently grabs her sleeve. Her star engineer. Brilliant, unstoppable. Only today he's pale. Eyes fixed on the floor. He looks like he's expecting to be fired. That customer validation thing, he says, voice cracking. I really tried. They want to talk to you. I think I dropped the ball. I'm so sorry. Julia stares at him stunned. This man built half of a product on nothing but liters of coffee and sheer stubbornness. And now he can't walk a client through a simple checklist? Julia has no idea what to make of this. She nods, hoping it's the right response. Her chief of staff materializes from nowhere. Oh, great that you're here! Not sure about that, Julia thinks, but keeps it to herself. Roadmap update. In 3 minutes. They literally won't start without you. Of course they won't. Not once have they ever started without her. Julia finally makes it to the server room, which doubles as a conference room, a storage space for last year's trade show materials, and her temporary office, ever since she gave her actual one to Ops. She steps inside, closes the door, leans back against it, and for the first time in a very long time, she realizes she has no idea how she got here, or what on earth she's supposed to do next. But it could be different. Now imagine the same morning. Same cramped corridor, same slalom between desks and flip charts. But the chaos is gone. People are moving, not swarming by the door waiting for Julia. Talking, not panicking. BizDev is on a call at the far end of the hallway, pacing like a peacock, and when Julia walks past, he gives her a proud thumbs up. Julia raises an eyebrow. Is he closing something big? The finance manager looks up from his screen. Julia asks casually, "Hey, how's that ARR issue the investors flagged?" "Our mistake. Tagging error. Already sorted. I sent them the corrected report and they confirmed it's fine. Topic closed." Julia nods and keeps walking. Someone from product leans out of a meeting room. "Julia, that problem management process you suggested we separate out, total game changer. That's exactly what we were missing." Julia just smiles. She passes her star engineer, who's sitting quietly at his desk in the corner. Headphones on, deep in code, completely oblivious to the world, as if the universe finally stopped dragging him into things he was never meant to handle. Julia's phone buzzes in her pocket. Without breaking stride, she glances at the notification. Customer validation results are in. Looking good. Julia can finally breathe. Progress. The chief of staff steps aside to let her pass. Julia gives her a puzzled look. "Don't we have the roadmap update today?" "We do, but you're on the quarterly now. Next one, next month." Julia nods. She reaches her office, still in the server/storage/conference room, but it feels like hers again. She opens her inbox and there it is, a reply from the venture debt fund. Her heart jumps, not from anxiety, from quiet electric excitement. Before we go further, a quick ask. If what I'm talking about here resonates with where you are right now and you'd like to hear more, hit subscribe. A thumbs up on this video would also mean a lot. In return, I'll keep making more content about how to scale a business without losing your mind along the way. Thank you for every bit of support. Remember learning to drive? You're 16, sweating, knuckles white on the wheel. But it's fine. Dad is in the passenger seat, doing his best impression of comm support, which really means he's gripping the handbrake like he's trying to rip it out of the floor. And weirdly, it helps, because even if you mess up, he can save the day. Fast forward a few years. You've been driving for a while now. You're relaxed now. One hand on the wheel, music too loud, sunglasses at night because, come on, it's obvious. You've even mastered the art of parallel parking with dignity. But not tonight. Exams in 2 weeks. You'll finally sit down to study. Parents are going out, a once-in-a-decade event. As soon as the door closes behind them, bang, your little brother blasts into the room like an armed response unit. "You promised!" You look at him, confused. A moment later it clicks. Ah, right, the driving lesson. That stupid bet he still refuses to forget. 10 minutes later, you're both in Dad's car. Your brother is in the driver's seat, and this time it's you gripping the handbrake like a life support machine, quietly reciting prayers you'd forgotten you still knew. Now, imagine losing another bet. Your little brother is back in the doorway, waving Dad's keys, grinning. "Relax, mate. I got this." This time, there's no hand on the handbrake, no second pair of eyes on the road. This time, it's just you in your room, watching from the window as the tail lights slowly shrink down the street and disappear around the corner. Not the end of the story yet. No, we're just getting started. A year or two later, a few more bets lost along the way. Your brother, still no license, drives pretty confidently now. Too confidently. Worryingly confidently. Tonight, he shows up again, grinning, keys dangling like a trophy. "Come on, brother. Garage." You follow him downstairs, already drafting your last will and testament. He unlocks the car and slides into the passenger seat. Yep, passenger seat. And before you can ask what fresh hell this is, the neighbor's 12-year-old squeezes past you, opens the driver's door, climbs in, and adjusts the mirror like he's been doing this for years. Your brother looks back at you and gives you the casual thumbs up. Relax, bro, I got this. And that feeling that just came over you, I'm almost tempted to say, no, that's not the end yet, we're just getting started. But I think you've felt strongly enough what it's like to keep moving further and further from your own comfort zone. And that feeling is exactly what we'll take apart today. You know what's funny? In the early days, being a one-man orchestra is basically a superpower. You fix the bug. You close the deal. You deploy a hotfix at 3 a.m. You run onboarding at 8 a.m. You pitch investors at noon. You live on adrenaline, energy drinks, and whatever food category protein bars belong to. And people love it. They admire the chaos you endure. They applaud your commitment. They share that photo of you sleeping on the floor in the server room with little fire emojis in the comments. Every decision going through you, you're considered a genius. That guy has a brain. Hear it enough times, and it becomes a part of your identity. But then, something changes. And here's the tricky part. The shift isn't loud. Nobody warns you. Nobody announces it like a weather forecast. There is no notification on your phone saying, "Reminder, the admiration era ends in 1 week." No, it just happens in the background. And suddenly, out of nowhere, the phrase one-man orchestra appears again. But this time it's not a compliment. This time, you see it in the due diligence report. Key risks section. That photo of you sleeping in the server room, people look at it now with disbelief. Is still coding? At this stage? And the facepalm parade begins. And every decision going through you, that's no longer a reason to admire you. Now your lead investor leans forward and very carefully chooses his words. You know, if you keep operating like this, I'm afraid we may need to have a serious conversation about a change at the top. Ouch. If this hasn't happened to you yet, don't worry, it's coming. Probably sooner than you think. I once worked with a founder who proudly ended every email with "sent on the run from the bathroom." For him, it was a signal of hustle, of dedication, total commitment to the company and its shareholders. Until the day, one of his Series A investors told him in front of 2 other partners, "Please remove that, immediately. I can't have my own investors thinking I backed someone who can't even plan their day well enough to send emails outside of a toilet." Right. Because the truth is, you never find out the shift has happened until it slaps you in the face. Admiration quietly turns into concern. Concern gently turns into frustration. And frustration, before you know it, starts turning into doubt. And it's all because of one thing that's just as inevitable as death and taxes. Change. And if you're here, something tells me you're most likely right in the middle of it. Let's be honest. You are where you are because you're good. Not lucky. Not in the right place at the right time. Good. You made things happen that had no right to happen. You built something out of nothing. You solved problems that other people didn't even understand. You kept going when any sane person would have quit. So of course, all of those achievements became the foundation of your self-worth, your sense of self, your image of who you are. And honestly, why wouldn't they? If you save a company from disaster 10 times in a year, your brain makes a very simple shortcut. This is who I am, this is what my role is, and this is why it all keeps working. That self-image gives you a certain comfort. It's real, it's fully earned. There's just one small but that almost nobody mentions. You see, success freezes your self-image much faster than failure does. If something works for you again and again, you start defining yourself through that lens. And the narrower the definition, the harder it is to change it. Psychologists call it identity foreclosure. In founder language, it sounds more like, I know what I'm doing, either get on board or get out of my way. In the eyes of serious A or B investors, this looks more like, Houston, we have a problem. Because scaling a company beyond a certain point doesn't just mean more people, more processes, more systems. It requires a shift of identity of the person at the helm. And no, it's not one of those situations you could describe with a metaphor. You used to drive a car and now you're driving a bus. Nice, but it completely misses the point. At 100, 200 people, you're not in the driver's seat anymore. You're not even in the passenger seat, teaching someone else how to drive. You're nowhere near any vehicle. Your job is no longer driving. Your job is traffic, infrastructure, capacity, road signs, safety. You no longer decide when to press the accelerator. You decide how many lanes the new bypass needs so that on the one hand, it doesn't bankrupt you to build it, and on the other, drivers don't break into tears at the very thought of having to turn onto it. Your magician identity, the one who can conjure something out of nothing, it still has enormous value. But the moment the company crosses a certain complexity threshold, that same identity starts acting like a cage. Not because you're doing something wrong, not because you're not trying hard enough, but because the forces acting on your company have changed. The tension you feel more and more often, that sense that no matter how many fires you put out, there's always another one smoldering around the corner, that unspoken, often unacknowledged conflict between who you've always been and who your company increasingly needs, those are the signs that you're standing at the threshold of an identity shift. Uncomfortable, disorienting, as if you were taking on ever greater responsibility while simultaneously losing control. But there's good news in all this. You don't have to go through this change in a single day. For starters, it's enough to see one thing clearly, that the role you mastered is not the same role you're holding right now. And the moment you really see that, everything else in this episode starts to fall into place. Adam Grant wrote a book called Think Again. His main point is very simple. In a fast-changing world, the most effective people are not the most intelligent ones. They're the ones who update their thinking most often. The ones who can question their own assumptions and discard the ones that are no longer true. The ones who reinvent the same thing from scratch. And I can already see what you're thinking. Come on, I'm reinventing things all the time. I have no doubt about that, and I'm certain you do it brilliantly. But what exactly are you reinventing? Let's do a quick check. Product roadmap. Every week? Every day? Every time a customer sneezes? GTM strategy. Every board meeting? Every time sales and marketing have one of those constructive exchanges about the quality of leads? What about hiring? Every quarter? Every month? Every time your finance manager sends you that brutal spreadsheet with the runway figure in red font size 48? Okay, and how often do you reinvent yourself? Your role as the company's leader at this particular stage of growth? What role do you play because you've always played it and honestly, you kind of love it? What role do you take on because, it's just faster if I do it myself? And what role do you never touch, even though somewhere deep down you sense that that's exactly where your real leverage is hidden? Most founders answer this question with something between rarely and oops, basically never. And that's completely normal. But it's also exactly the source of the tension you're increasingly feeling. Your company has grown. Your team has expanded. The complexity of your processes has changed. Only your internal definition of yourself, of who you are and what your role is, simply hasn't caught up. And that too is completely normal. So let's dig deeper. I remember the exact moment when the founding CEO, scaling CEO shift really clicked for me. A few years ago, one of my clients' portfolio companies was offered a merger. 4 times their ARR. Their technology, well, maybe a half of what our side already had. And they weren't shy about it. They wanted the technology. The potential, definitely worth a closer look. Walking into the conference room, we already knew most of the answers. My job wasn't to fact check. My job was to read between the lines. First up, our guy, the founder. Half of the revenue so far, his contacts. 1/3 of the product, his code. First impression, 10% preparation, 90% improvisation. Creative, convincing, talking at lightning speed, a true force of nature. Product strategy. Biggest clients first. Roadmap follows their needs. 10 features in the next release, unless something changes, because you have to be hyper agile, right? Key team. 12 faces on the slide. 12 equally impressive titles. CTO, VP of Product, VP of AI, Chief Solution Architect, Chief Biz Dev Officer, Head of CS, Head of Ops, Head of UX UI, Finance Manager, Head of Legal, PR Visionary. A full orchestra of seniority. Sales, a slide of logos. Big ones, impressive ones. Revenue figures, also impressive. Without currency symbols, but come on, obviously euros. Runway. 10 months, maybe 11, maybe 12 if he delays back office hires. Next round's pitch deck, almost done. Customer escalation question. Now, that one caught him off guard. Laptop out, a few clicks, and a long story about a new feature that will solve the whole thing next Friday. That was the founding CEO, the problem solver, a one-man special forces unit, MacGyver with a pocket knife, someone who isn't afraid to roll up their sleeves. Someone who acts first, because the world moves far too fast to rationally plan anything. Then came their CEO. Brought in after Series A. Took the company from around 100 people to over 450. First impression, calm, steady, speaking slowly, as if nothing in the world could ever surprise him. Studying the room while he answered. Product strategy. He started with 2 sentences about the market and the competition. Then a planned positioning shift. 3 things they needed to change to shift customer perception. 5 key success metrics. Based on those, 4 strategic directions. Everything else is a firm no. And yes, he did quote Steve Jobs on Focus. Key team. 4 people. Himself, responsible for BizDev. Plus CPO, COO, CFO. Clear KPIs for each. Sales. A few charts. Geography, concentration, sector split, historical growth. Forecast based on 3 pillars of the new GTM strategy. Plan versus actual showed clean, disciplined delivery. Runway. 10 months to stable break-even. 6-month reserve. Funding secured. Term sheet for the post-break-even M&As also signed. Customer escalation question. He just smiled. We're a SaaS, not a software house. Some customer dissatisfaction is the natural consequence of that decision. Our churn is 3.8%, below our own target of 4%, and below the 5% benchmark for our segment. That was the scaling CEO, the general, the strategist with a bird's eye view, the allocator of people, attention, and energy. Not someone who puts out fires. Someone who designs a system where fires stop starting. Both brilliant, both essential, both perfect, each for their own stage. And both operating from completely different skill sets. Now that you've seen the contrast, let's deal with something most founders never say out loud. If you're listening to this episode, something tells me you're probably somewhere in the middle. Not fully founding CEO anymore, the one who thinks, I'll just do it myself, it's faster. But not yet fully scaling CEO either. The calm strategist who looks at the whole picture from altitude and conducts the orchestra without playing any instrument themselves. You're in that uncomfortable transition zone where both identities are pulling you in opposite directions. One says, go, fix it, you'll do it fastest. The other quietly whispers, stop, take a step back. This is not your job anymore. And here's the good news. This is normal, genuinely. Almost every founder I've worked with is in exactly this place. Because this transition is not a single switch you flip. It's a series of small adjustments, a gradual rebalancing of roles, step by step. And before you can start leading differently, you need to answer one very important question. Do you actually want to become a scaling CEO? Is this change really for you? Let's take the first step to find out. I have a small experiment for you. You know intuition, don't you? Perhaps you met at university. Exams in a month. You finally sit down to study. You open the textbook and then you hear it. That voice in your head. Mate, there's a party on the second floor of the dorm. Great music, beer, good people. Close that book, let's go. But I have exams in a month. Don't worry, I got you. So you go. Why wouldn't you? A week later, exams in 3 weeks, you sit down again painfully to study. You open the book and the same voice, right on cue. Seriously, books again? There's a party tonight. But exams? Trust me, I gotcha. And on it goes every single time you try to study. Finally, exam day. You open the test sheet, stare at the questions, and whisper, oh shit. Your intuition whispers, oh hell. Well, these things happen, but it's not this impulsive party gremlin we're inviting to our experiment today. Today, we're asking for a completely different kind of intuition. Picture a grandmother who looks a little like Yoda, thinks like Yoda, and sounds definitely like Yoda. The one who was there for every single stupid mistake you ever made. And for every moment of genuine brilliance. She remembers all of it. She understands the patterns they follow. She knows how to see where you're heading before you see it yourself. The intuition, I mean, is the accumulated wisdom of millions of tiny, varied experiences that never quite arrange themselves into a coherent whole in your conscious mind. She remembers things you have long forgotten. She notices signals that you keep missing. She doesn't shout. She doesn't push. She waits quietly for the moment you finally stop long enough to hear what she has to say. And it's that intuition that we're going to talk with now. Imagine that tomorrow morning at the board meeting you are asked, do you want to stay on as CEO or are we bringing someone in for the scaling phase? Not the founding phase, not the firefighting, not the late night heroics you remember so well from the early days. No, no, no. The scaling phase. Replacing the chaos with order. Building the invisible infrastructure that prevents fires from starting before they happen. You have 30 seconds to answer. No spreadsheets, no week to weigh the pros and cons, no lifelines. Just you, your intuition, and 30 seconds. So, what's your answer? Your first instinctive reaction, nothing more. That first pull, forward or backward, that's her. That's your intuition. Not the party gremlin, the Grandma Yoda. The one who's been quietly watching you for years and knows you better than you know yourself. The good news is she usually knows. The bad news, she won't decide for you. That is your job. If you're thinking right now, yes, I want this, I can feel this is for me. Excellent. Congratulations on the decision clarity. You are, in no pun intended, a decided minority. In the next episodes, I'll walk you through the transition step by step and show you how to navigate it most effectively. If you're thinking, honestly, I'm not sure I'm ready for this, that's completely fine, genuinely. Many founders feel that way, even though almost no one says it out loud. Maybe your intuition is telling you that there's still a long road ahead. And that's okay too. There's nothing wrong with being at the beginning of a journey. Every change starts exactly there. The most important thing is deciding that you want to sit out. And if your intuition is saying very clearly, mate, this isn't a role for you, that's 100% okay too. Because it may simply mean there are other roles in the startup world where you feel far more at home. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. Quite the opposite. Knowing that your place is elsewhere is an enormous strength. Why exhaust yourself trying to become someone you're not when staying true to yourself could move mountains? Perhaps the best move you could make right now is to say openly that scaling doesn't really excite you. And move to the supervisory board. Bring in a CEO who genuinely loves the scaling phase. And go back to what makes you feel alive. Building from scratch. Being the magician who can conjure something out of nothing. That's a completely legitimate path. Investors will respect it. Your team will respect it. And your future self will thank you for it. What's more, there are pre-seed funds looking for exactly this kind of people. Ex-founders launching their second, third, maybe fourth startup. And getting funding for the next one is incomparably easier than the first. Because you already have track record. You've already done this. Taken a company from zero to where it is now. That experience has enormous value to investors. Or maybe your intuition doesn't know yet what to suggest. Maybe you're thinking, I need to understand better what this actually involves before I make any conscious decision. And that's absolutely fine too. Stay with me. In the next episodes, we'll walk through this step by step. I'll cover the most important pillars of the scaling CEO role, and you'll be able to decide consciously whether this is a direction that you want to take. There's only one thing that's not okay. Getting stuck somewhere in between. Half founding CEO, half scaling CEO, and 100% completely exhausted. Clinging to operational tasks, rolling your sleeves up non-stop, fighting fires in the middle of the night without a single moment to look at the whole picture from above and act with any real strategic intent. Trying to be everywhere at once and carrying the ever-growing weight of frustration, because if you try to be everywhere, realistically, you're nowhere. Especially not where a fast-growing company needs its leader the most. That is the danger zone. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're trying to perform two roles that are completely incompatible. You can't both have your cake and eat your cake. Let me tell you what happens when a founder stays in that place for too long. Let's call him Jack. Jack was absolutely brilliant, sharp, fast, intuitive. A classic 0-1 builder, a kind who could sell ice to Eskimos and build a billing system from scratch in the same afternoon. He built his company on sheer force of will because when he started, he had nothing else. And for a long time, his "my company's me" approach genuinely worked. But as the company grew, Jack didn't change his approach. He did the exact opposite. He did what he'd always done, only with twice the force. He ruled by decree. Every decision went through him. Every escalation landed in his personal inbox. Every conflict waited for his verdict. As the company grew, his executive orders became more and more superficial. Slowly, the cracks appeared. Departments drifted apart, each convinced that the other one was the problem. Sales blamed product blamed ops blamed both. Cross-functional work became no man's land, a swamp of topics no one would touch because everyone knew the swamp would swallow them before they crossed it. Publicly, product-led growth. Internally, sales spending 90% of their time fighting churn, with no bandwidth to build any new pipeline. Growth fell from over 80% year-on-year to barely a dozen percent, far too low for any Series B investor to take Jack seriously. Every time Jack tried to fix something, he heard the same thing over and over again. We don't have the resources for that. Well, hard to argue with, so costs ballooned, runway shrank. And the first payment delays appeared. Small at first, only with large partners who had cash reserves so they wouldn't even notice. Then, delays in management salaries. Senior people can manage, Jack told himself, lecturing anyone who asked for their pay about how leadership requires sacrifice. And eventually, it started hitting regular employees as well. Vendors started cutting off access. Clients started complaining that the software wasn't working the way it should. Several key clients eventually terminated their contracts. People started leaving. Some filed claims for unpaid wages. Some only threatened. Others became remarkably open on the internet. HR spent hours each day trying to repair the employer brand after those very public exit interviews. Prospective investors stopped returning calls. I remember at a meetup overhearing one of Jack's early investors talking to someone who was just looking at his pitch deck. "Oh, that guy, that fraudster, stay well clear, king of promises, nobody can give you what I can. But when you come asking for results, suddenly he evaporates." Then came the headline. Jack's former business partner gave an interview to one of the biggest news outlets in the country. He didn't mince his words. "I have absolutely no idea how he's still the CEO. Jack has no competence, no class, and no charisma." And when Jack's investor, trying to salvage the millions he'd put in, hired a coach to sort out the team, no, it wasn't me, the coach needed exactly 1 week to deliver the verdict. The team is perfectly fine. The problem is the CEO. Long story short, not a path I'd recommend. And all of it, every conflict, every failure, every burned bridge, because Jack was completely convinced that what had taken him from 0 to a 200-person company would magically take him further. It didn't. So let this land. Founders don't burn out because they're not capable enough. Founders burn out because they resist for too long the inevitable change of their role as CEO. So yes, you have a choice ahead of you, one that genuinely matters. Your intuition already knows what it thinks. You felt it, even if it wasn't the answer you were hoping for. You don't have to decide today. Give yourself a week. Let it settle. And let that be your challenge for the next 7 days. Observe yourself. Notice which topics naturally keep coming back to you. Which parts of your work give you an authentic surge of energy? And which ones, more or less consciously, you resist with everything you have? Write them down as you go. In your phone notes, on a post-it, whatever works for you. After a week, come back to what you've written and calmly see which role feels closer to you. Founding CEO, the one-man orchestra who isn't afraid to roll up their sleeves and fight the fires in the middle of the night. Someone who prefers to create rather than optimize. Someone who loves to experiment and doesn't mind cleaning up the mess they've made in the process. Or scaling CEO. The person who directs the traffic, who organizes the chaos, who hires people better than themselves and lets those people do the doing while they set the direction and focus on prevention rather than cure. Whichever direction feels closer to you, it will be a decision that writes the next chapter in your company's life and in your life as well. So give yourself that week to think it through properly. And when you're ready, we'll take the next step. In the next episode of Founder to Zero, we'll deal with something that most founders underestimate for a very long time. We'll answer the question of how to genuinely increase your influence on what happens in the company, not by adding to your workload, but by reducing it. I'll show you how to get your time back and stop being the bottleneck with delegation to zero. Delegation done in a way that doesn't just end in frustration and an ever-growing list of to-dos, but actually works, especially in fast-growing companies. And if you'd like to see how I work with founders one-on-one at a considered pace in full confidentiality and without cheap pop coaching slogans, you'll find the link below this video. And if the episode was useful, leave a comment, like, share, subscribe. It genuinely helps me make more content like this. That's it for today. Take care, and see you in the next episode.